I apologize. I may have been some tech difficulties, some microphone difficulties. Are you guys able to hear me? Hopefully. We'll just actually just kind of keep going still while we try to sort this
We can hear you just fine.
Perfect. So, we are going to go through this tutorial because this game is essentially through a very special way to sort of explain the game, because the tutorial kind of gives us that little bit of reading room in terms of the run, because it's a very high-paced action RPG, which you wouldn't think for a trading card game. But one thing you'll notice as we go throughout the run is the interface is very, very fast, meaning menuing is going to be something that is very instant. And so this tutorial, even though you see the text kind of going real slow, it's going to go instantly fast the moment we get out of this tutorial. Typical for a speedrun, you can actually skip the tutorial and you wouldn't just be going through adding 8 minutes and 3 seconds onto the timer. But yeah, so this game, the way you play it is basically a card version of the RPG, where you have your team, you build up your Pokemon, you have resources called energy cards, which basically you use to be able to attack. Now, this game has, in terms of Pokemon types, they have actually consolidated a lot of the Pokemon types, even from all the way back from Red, Blue, and Yellow, to actually be just 7 types. So instead of having, stuff like Bug and Poison and Ghost, instead we have only 7 types. We have Fire, Water, Lightning, Grass, Fighting, Psychic, and Colorless, which Colorless is basically another way to say normal or flying type Pokemon. So basically, the way type matchups work in this game is they essentially use up they basically have every Pokemon has their own individual weakness. It's not like in the old Red, Blue, yeah. Sorry. The problem with the tutorial is if you miss a single input, you basically have to go through like a repeat that portion of the tutorial game, which is never fun. But yes, basically, if say Seeking, who is a water type, normally they're both weak to lightning and grass. But in the TCG's case, they only have one weakness. So that's something you sort of have to consider when you're making a deck and you're trying to beat your opponents. So there are 2 ways that primarily we will have, 2 different ways we'll have for the speedrun. Is that we have a...
There are 2 different ways that we actually have, will have the speedrun to win, which is you either beat all of your opponent's Pokemon in just one fell swoop, and they don't have anything else on their bench, or you take out their prize card. You get all your prize cards. Prize cards are essentially special cards from your deck that you just place on a special part of the field, and every time you knock out a Pokemon, you get to collect that prize card and add it onto your hand, which some prize cards could be very useful. They're just random cards from your deck, so they could be a very powerful card that you added onto your deck that just gets selected to be a prize card by random. And so essentially, this game, there's basically 2 ways. So you either collect all your prizes, or you get all your get your opponent's Pokemon knocked out even before you are able to collect all your prizes. This game has starters. Believe it or not, this trading card game actually has starter Pokemon. So the 3 decks are based on the classic Kanto starters: Charmander, Squirtle, and Bulbasaur. For the purposes of this run, we're actually going to be doing the Bulbasaur and Friends deck. The deck is a very highly aggressive playstyle because it does have a lot of Pokemon such as Hitmonchan, Electabuzz, Dugtrio, which is going to be our win condition, but that's not to say that the other decks aren't good. Charmander was the most popular category throughout the history of this speedrun for like 95% of it, because it's got a lot of utility cards that are vitally important to a speedrun, and having those cards from the very beginning is huge to have. Squirtle, unfortunately, is definitely the least popular because it doesn't have that many good cards. The amount of resources you get are really, really bad, but that doesn't mean you can't get a good time on it. Actually, the 6th fastest runner in the history of the game actually was able to do it from a Squirtle deck. So essentially, you can pick any deck you want, and if you're skilled enough, you can actually get a really good time on them. So another thing about this game is the open worldness of it all. Yes, this predates stuff like Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet in terms of Pokemon games that use an open world. Travel is basically instantaneous, meaning you can get really creative with the routing and what gym fights, or rather club masters. In this game, they're not called gyms, they're called clubs. So basically, it's it's left up to the imagination of the runner and left up to the creativeness of the runner and everything to be able to formulate a speed run of this game. No two runs of this game are ever equal. You could be having 2 Bulbasaur decks running at the same time, and they will look entirely different based on the routing, what cards they will use to start, and everything in between, which means this is a very fun game. You're not going to see the same thing every single time, so it does kind of make being able to watch like multiple runs, you'll be able to appreciate more just because of how good those runs can be. Involves a lot of resource management, a lot of on-the-fly thinking, basically trying to think 3 steps ahead of where you and your opponent are going to be, and that's essentially the mechanics of the game itself. The story is basically the same as Red, Blue, and Yellow. You have a rival, there's 8 clubs you have to beat, get their badges, or club medals in this case, beat the Elite Four, which in this case they're called the Grandmasters, and you become the champion. That's essentially the name of the game. We are going to be doing one very cool trick in terms of RNG manipulation, which is something called mail manipulation, in just a second. So this game basically operates on a global frame rule, which dictates everything from what cards your opponent will get at the start of the deck, what fights they're gonna be, how coin flips are going to work, and we are going to basically use that to our advantage to be able to do, and oops, that's not what I wanted to do. There we go. Yes, we have now skipped an animation. So basically, we are going to be doing a soft reset because that global frame counter, it's going to start right now, and we are waiting in about 7 seconds. And if we just time it just right, we will get a Hitmonchan. Might have hit the frame a little bit early. Yeah, just a couple of frames early, but yeah, we're gonna try this a couple of more times just to kind of show it off. But yes, if you are able to basically figure out what frame you want to collect your free booster pack here, you get your free Hitmonchan, or actually any card that you want. So yes, that is mail manipulation. It's a very cool little trick. It's not necessary for the purposes of a speedrun to get a good time. My latest PB that I actually got a couple of weeks ago, or actually last week, we actually got it without doing any mail manipulation whatsoever. So again, you can do, it's not a necessary thing to get a good time. It's just a cool little thing that I always like to show off in marathons. And oops, a little bit of minor mistake right then and there. So basically, the amount of energy cards, the resources that we used for our Pokemon to attack, we don't start out with a whole lot of them. But this kind gentleman here at the Mason Laboratory, our starting point in the game, will give us a lot of energy if we are able to manipulate our deck in a way that makes it seem like we barely have any unused cards. So basically, we are able to essentially trick him saying, hey, I don't really have that many energy cards. Can you spare a few? And we were able to do just that, which means the early game is going to be a lot more consistent. We are going to start off for the next several few fights doing a Hitmonchan only strategy. This strategy essentially uses up a lot of high risk, high reward type of battles. A lot of these fights have a, what's the word for it? A lot of these fights at the very start of the run have a lot of Pokemon that actually can wall Hitmonchan. So if we encounter those Pokemons during the fight, then we actually have to restart. But that's the cool thing about this game. Resetting fights is like traveling instant, meaning we don't have to worry about the the game being kind of annoying with like waiting for fights to end. So this is our first encounter of a potential roadblock, such as ooh, that might be a reset because yeah, it's the unfortunate part is that it is a very risky strategy basically going through it. Let's see. Is this a good fight? It is. Okay, perfect. This is why resetting is so good. We basically re-roll a fight to get a better fight, and we did. We got the fight. We got the win in the very first turn. So that's essentially what you want. That's the ideal strategy to be able to get those fights in. That was a Scyther, which will be very useful for one specific fight that we'll encounter in a little bit. One thing about the booster packs, and there's actually 4 different types of booster packs you get from winning a fight. Number 1, you get the cards are as follows. The booster packs are as follows: Coliseum, Mystery, Evolution, and Laboratory. The ones that we really, really want are the Coliseum ones, because those are the ones that will give you the absolute best chances of victory in terms of the fights, in terms of cards that will be useful to you over the course of the speedrun. There are 6 fights that will give you Coliseum packs, and we're actually going to go for the vast majority of them in a row almost, because we want to be able to set ourselves up to be a lot more consistent and a lot better off heading into some of the later fights that are going to be more difficult. First 2 Coliseum booster packs didn't yield a lot of great cards. The Scyther is pretty good, but again, it is only going to be useful for one fight. We are going to be encountering our very first boss, per se. He's not a boss, but he's a fight that's difficult enough that you can call him a boss. Michael. That is a reset right there. Michael is very aggressive because he will use a lot of Pokemon such as... Ooh, this is an excellent one. Michael has a lot of high-power Pokemon like Hitmonchan, Electabuzz, Magmar, Hitmonlee. So those types of Pokemon go up against while you're going up against them with only one Hitmonchan, it's a little bit tricky. But the second Hitmonchan that we got from the mail manipulation basically acts as a very good insurance. Thankfully, we don't need to worry about that because we were able to beat Michael 1 reset only and did so in 4 turns. That's actually pretty decent. And just seeing, we're actually on pretty good time. Ooh, that's an Electabuzz. Electabuzz will be helpful for the Water Club. Shocker, the Lightning Pokemon is good against water. And speaking of Lightning, we are actually going to go collect our very first badge here at the Lightning Club. This club, basically, in order to fight its boss, you need to beat all 3 members of the club first. And unfortunately, we have to face one of the fights that is probably one of the most annoying fights in the early game or at any point in the game. Jennifer, I should say, has an all Pikachu deck, and this deck is the Pikachu deck is pretty easy except for one, which is Flying Pikachu, which is the only Pokemon that can take care of Hitmonchan. So we essentially have to look for a fight that doesn't have us go through a flying Pikachu. Okay, that's a 1 versus 1, and that's a flying Pikachu. Yeah, that's kind of the. I promise this will not be a common occurrence. That Jennifer is just very annoying. There's no point in the run where you can actually do this fight and just say, okay, I feel pretty confident about doing this fight. Okay. That is, ooh, perfect. That is actually a turn 1 victory for us. So yeah, a little bit of a struggle right then and there, but not too terrible. And the next couple of fights before we get to the boss are, you know, much easier. Brandon is a much easier fight. The only thing you have to worry about is a Zapdos, but guess what? There's no Zapdos. We won at the very first turn. Boom. And that's the beauty of the Bulbasaur strategy being hyper aggressive, is that you're rewarded with some excellent fights that you can just win in 20 seconds or less. So this might be actually a reset. Yeah, Brandon is Nicholas is a pretty easy fight. But the annoying part about it is that he uses Pokemon like Coughing and Geodude. But oh, perfect! Another turn 1 victory. That's now 3 in a row. Obviously, we took us a couple of resets, but that's 3 straight fights that ended with a turn 1 victory. And for our troubles, we get a 3rd Electabuzz, believe it or not. So, we are going to encounter our very first true proper boss of the fight. And I will basically explain one funny quirk about the AI in terms of the boss fights. But first, I will let the music kind of play a little bit, because this music is absolutely amazing. Okay, so a little bit of a taste of the music. So, the AI, if you'll notice that in our last few fights, we were able to get the victory without much problem doing the getting a victory in the very first turn. You can't do that in the AI. The AI will never, and I mean never, have just one Pokemon starting out on the bench. Every single instance of fighting a boss, they are literally programmed to have always 2 Pokemon in their starting hand. So at most you can maybe hope for a turn 2 victory depending on your setup. But thanks to our lovely Hitmonchan and the cards we've been able to accumulate throughout the run, this was a piece of cake. And 17.5 minutes for Isaac. It's actually a really, really good. We are just flying. Aside from Jennifer, we have been flying through this early game. So I'm actually very happy about that. So let's see. Up next, we got Chris, which is essentially, it's kind of like Michael. He is the final trainer that we have to beat in order to challenge the Fighting Club Gym. He will be the hardest of the, not hardest. He's actually not that bad, but he can be quite annoying in terms of getting some of these fights. Let's see. Do we get a fighting energy? We do. A choke usually is a bit of a problem, but we were able to take it out before it really becomes an issue. And that's a... Ooh. We are in the danger zone, but... Thankfully, we have our Trusty Plus power, which may just be, honestly, the best card in the game, believe it or not. It basically adds 10 more damage to your next attack the turn you play it. And you'd be surprised, as you actually just saw it in 2 instances. if just 10 more damage just makes the fight a lot more faster, and because we are able to knock out opposing Pokemon just like that. And we probably will need that for the next fight that we have up ahead, which is Amanda. Actually, no. Before we get to Amanda, let's fight her sister instead, which is maybe the easiest fight in the game, except for one little potential roadblock, but that's a more of a cross that bridge when we get there. And we have, okay, that is fine. This will be kind of a long 4-turn victory, but it will be fine. So the thing about Amanda can be quite annoying, believe it or not, because she is a member of the Water Club. But the thing about Amanda is that her ace are not water-type Pokemon. They are Scyther and Wigglytuff. Scyther and Wigglytuff. They have elements of the old Haymaker deck that ran rampant through competitive Pokemon back in the day. And we actually have a third Hitmonchan, but we're actually not going to do that because we are going to employ the only instance of a double Pokemon, double type Pokemon deck strategy, because Scyther resists Hitmonchan, but Charmander takes out Scyther no problem. But we can't just fully rely on... Ooh, this could actually be... Oh, it's not going to be a turn 1 win. Oh, well. Friendship Stone could be very annoying, but we're able to... Okay, this could be a good win. We'll just have to see whether or not the Scyther will be appearing at any point, but it doesn't look like it, so... If all goes well, if this ends up being a 3-turn victory for Amanda... Wow, that is really good. Wow, this is one of the better starts I've had in as far as a marathon. Maybe the best start I've ever had on a marathon. This is some very good RNG that we've had. We will now actually go through... Remember when I said Scyther will be useful for one specific fight? Well, here it is, Gene. He is our Rock Club master that we will be using that one Scyther for, because none of Gene's Pokemon can actually take out Scyther. So we will thankfully be able to do this fight relatively easily. It's not a consistently great fight, because this is one of those instances where the AI cheats, and there's a Rhyhorn that uses Leer, where it can potentially stun lock you almost indefinitely, but thankfully we have not encountered that yet. Oh, there's the Rhyhorn. But this will be... Ooh, we have a plus power, so that's actually going to be very useful, because Rhyhorn has 70 HP, and Scyther normally has... and Scyther's attack, with adding the ×2 multiplier for weakness, usually only will do 60, but the plus power means that we can actually take it out in one hit. And believe it or not, Gene is doing everything in his power to avoid bringing out the Rhyhorn, which actually works great for us, because that just means that whatever he has planning, we can actually keep collecting more prize cards. So here's the example of the Leer Lock, and Leer Lock fails, meaning we actually take out Gene in relatively quick fashion. Let's see, unless he switches into that Rhyhorn, that second Rhyhorn, which he does not. There we go. That is Gene. That is a very, very good Gene. So we are now going to encounter our rival, the guy that you saw at the very beginning of the game. Yep, it's now our turn to fight him. You know how every Pokemon game has you face your rival every so often as a bit of a litmus test to see where you are at that particular moment of your adventure. So we are going to be doing something very special. This special Magnemite strategy is a strategy that we have been able to develop through hard science, a lot of computing over the years, and you will not believe how we can actually win this fight. By losing. That's right, we actually win this fight by losing this fight. The deal with this fight is that Ronald doesn't know how to play the game. He actually doesn't know how to build a deck, and so if we leave him up to his own devices and leave him to try to beat it legitimately, we are probably going to be here all day in most instances. So the easiest way to actually go through that fight is to, believe it or not, lose on purpose, and this special Magnemite strategy is the reason why we are able to do that. But that will actually not be our only instance of Magnemite, essentially. Magnemite being useful to us against Ronald. We will actually encounter him again in a couple, I would say in about 10 minutes or so. Might not even be 10 minutes, given how we've been flying through this game. So yeah, so you notice that some of the fights, some of the clubs, we've been able to challenge them immediately. Immediately battle their bosses. Okay, ooh, rare case of double evolution right there, but nothing there. So, but yeah, basically, some bosses, they have requirements to actually be able to challenge them. For example, example of Lightning and Water Club, you have to fight all of their members before you're able to challenge their boss. In this case, it's Amy. One example being the Fire Club. You have to collect a certain amount of cards before you have the right to challenge them. Murray, the Psychic Gym Leader, Club Master, actually, you have to collect 4 badges. I think it's 4 badges before you're able to challenge him. So this is actually not a bad start. Horsey can be very difficult. Quite annoying, actually, because Horsey has a move called Smokescreen. And the way Smokescreen works is that it does 10 damage to you, which isn't a whole lot, but the next turn, if you want to attack, you actually have to flip a coin, and if it lands heads, your attack proceeds. If it lands tails, your turn automatically ends, which is very annoying, and if you get really unlucky with 3-4 straight turns of that Horsey hitting Smokescreen and you not being able to attack, then oh boy, it starts to pile up, and having multiple Electabuses is a massive help. So just mainly for insurance reasons, but we didn't even need that second Electabuzz because we got ourselves our 3rd medal at only 27.5 minutes. This is actually like barely a minute over an old PB that I had not too long ago. Okay, and so this will be our final instance of the ooh, that's 4 versus 1. That's not what we want. Final instance of using Electabuses. This is our roadblock to the Science Gym. We actually have to fight the gatekeeper, so to speak, of this club, which is Joseph. His strategy, just use bird Pokemon, and what's weak to birds? Lightning. Let's see. There we go. Perfect. And that was, okay. Joseph can be quite annoying because he also has the Flying Pikachu, and, ooh, actually, we're actually gonna reset. Because that actually ended up not being a heads as I wanted, but we're able to, this is something that we didn't really explore a whole lot, because we actually haven't encountered that many situations where we needed to reset, to repeat a certain action, because of how actually consistent this run has been. So basically, what this game is, it has a It has a bit of a reset feature. It's not a glitch. It's an actual feature in the game where you're able to restart a fight, or not restart a fight, restart the very last action you did in the fight. So in our case, it was right before we got to the right before we hit attack, and we were able to go back and basically correct our little snafu by adding that plus power and being able to get that victory right then and there. Just gonna quick peek in the chat. Ooh, that is a loss right there. That's a rare first turn loss to Ken. Ken and Murray are basically sister fights, and is that okay. Okay, this is fine for now. So Ken and Murray are essentially sister fights. They are the leaders of the Fire and Psychic clubs, respectively. But they, as you'll notice throughout the next few minutes, they both had a lot of colorless Pokemon, a lot of tanky Pokemon. Ooh, this might be another start. We'll see. What? Okay. No, actually, no. We are good for now. And so a lot of those tanky Pokemon, there's a lot of stalling to be done by both Murray and Ken. And they're just gonna constantly switch out their Pokemon. So we are going to hope that we can draw into our Duck Trio. We do not, but okay. This is actually going to be a very important important little deal. Okay. Okay, you just saw right there that coin flip was tails. Okay, so remember when I said at the very start of the run that frames basically dictate everything. That includes coin flips. You saw right there when I used my Pokeball, it actually landed tails, so we went back in time, for lack of a better word. We went back in time and we didn't use the Pokeball. The reason being is that once we figure out when that coin flip actually lands and we know the result of it, it essentially stays locked. The only way you can change the outcome of a coin flip that we already know the result of is a couple of things. Sometimes the AI will just decide on its own through certain actions. Shuffling the deck will also re-roll the coin flip to make it random. So what we essentially did was we knew that the next coin flip was going to be a tails. So instead of us wasting it, we actually didn't use the coin flip and let our opponent use that guaranteed coin flip loss so that we can benefit the next time we have to flip a coin if we needed to flip a coin. So that was Ken. Now comes Murray. Murray is essentially the same fight as Ken, except for one major difference. The way his AI works is that he has a bunch of Psychic type Pokemon. And as you saw right there, he just switched out his Chansey for Mr. Mime. Now, on paper, Mr. Mime does have the innate advantage over something like a Hitmonchan just based on type coverage. However, he needs 2 turns to be able to attack. And you would think to yourself, wait a minute, why did he set out the why did he bring out a Mr. Mime that can't attack only to get thrashed by the, let's see, perfect, thrashed by the Hitmonchan? Well, this is actually harkens back to all Generation 1 all Pokemon Generation 1 logic with the AI. In certain fights, they will often go for what is the type advantage, even though it may not be the logical fight. And as you saw right there, Murray was just trying really, really hard to make sure that he gets the type matchup, even though he couldn't attack at all. And so that's why Hitmonchan is kind of important, because the AI will essentially abandon all logic if it means having to get a type advantage. And we use that to our advantage, that little exploitation of an AI quirk to be able to get the victory. All right. We are actually, like I said, we are blazing through this. So this is an excellent, I mean excellent run so far. So we are actually going to be preparing our deck for another instance of Ronald being Ronald. And while we basically, you already saw how the strategy works. So if there are any messages or any donations you want to read, now is actually the perfect time to do so.
Excellent. We actually don't have any donations at the moment, but we do have some info about the charity we're raising money for. Today, we are raising money for Mind. So, Mind are a charity that aims to ensure that nobody faces a mental health problem alone. They help with their info line, their legal line, and they have award-winning information available as well. Currently, our goal for the event is £100. If you can reach out, that would be fantastic. Currently, we have already reached 50, which does mean we will be having a bonus stream at some point with We Pay Billiards. Every £1 will be an extra game of billiards coming through there. So do get your donations in, and yeah, I'll throw it back to you for the run.
Yep, thank you so much. And you saw while I was remaining silent, we did lose to Ronald, and we actually did get a special Mewtwo card that is actually only available after you beat Murray. We will only use this Mewtwo once, because there is a fight which we are actually about to do right now against Mitch, the Fighting Club trainer. There's a number of ways you can actually go for this fight. The main, I guess the riskiest, but it's not even that risky, because due to the nature of resetting fights, we're able to actually have a lot of some of the fights go our way. Let's see. Ooh, this is perfect. This is literally the perfect opening hand. So, the reason why Mewtwo is so good for this fight is that Mewtwo typically requires 3 energy to be able to attack, which means we have to waste 3 turns to do so. However, if we are able to discard our hand on the opening turn, that might have been one of the fastest Mitch fights ever in history. So, what I was about to say is Mewtwo has a move where he can pull energy cards from the discard pile. And if you have a way to discard your hand on the very first turn, you can attack on the second turn and you essentially win. What makes it even better is that we had a defender, which essentially means we are immune to damage that inflicts 20 damage or below for the next turn. And that's the only move that Machop can do is 20 damage. So we were essentially untouchable. But now we are in the Science Club. This can be a little bit tricky. We are actually going to be resetting the fight. Okay, so we are going to employ a similar strategy with Rick. However, instead of Mewtwo, we're actually going to be using Kadabra to essentially sweep this fight. And what we are going to do is first of all, we are actually going to use this first Abra as a unfortunate sacrificial lamb, because Kadabra is absurdly strong for this fight. The only drawback to Kadabra is that he has only 60 HP, and Porygon can essentially change our own weakness. However, there is, okay. We're essentially kind of brainstorming here and trying to see what we can do to try to see if we can get out of a potential jam, because Porygon just changed our weakness, meaning that we will now take 20 damage instead of 10 from Grimer. But thankfully, we didn't get paralyzed. We can still keep going through. I think we're actually going to be fine. Yes, we are actually going to be fine. If we actually got hit with paralysis, then it would have been a slightly more annoying fight, but wow, this is... This, by the way, you're maybe witnessing one of the greatest live marathon runs ever. Not to toot my own horn, but at the very least, up to this point, this is one of the better marathon runs I certainly have witnessed, or I certainly have been a part of. So thank you so much, first of all, to you guys for having me here. I greatly appreciate it. We are actually rolling on to, we're just steamrolling through, basically kind of out of the mid game. We're now approaching the late game with the next couple of fights before we get to the, essentially the finale of it all. Let's see. Do we have a Kadabra? We have a Kadabra, but are we gonna live long enough to be able to... Okay, okay. There we go. So, the way this fight works with Brittany is one of those fights that don't qualify as being a boss, but you might as well call them a boss fight, is that we're going to evolve our Kadabra. So eventually we're going to do the exact same thing we did with Rick, but with Brittany instead. Brittany has the highest amount of basic Pokemon in the entire speed run, as well as the most diverse pool of Pokemon. Now, you would think to yourself, well, that sounds pretty problematic, and for the most part, it is. Let's see. Do we... Okay, we're actually about to do something potentially really cool, if it works. Didn't work. Okay, so we essentially were about to try to re-roll the RNG to be in our favor, but that didn't work exactly how I wanted. Okay, perfect. There it is. Sometimes drawing a card from the hand is enough to be able to re-roll the coin flips into our favor. But yes, there's no true strategy to beating Brittany. But the best strategy is Kadabra, and we are actually going to... We might have to prepare another Kadabra just in case. Yeah, this Kadabra is going down due to poison. So that's the great thing about having Kadabras and using them at this stage of the game, because we actually don't have to worry about... we don't have to worry about like running out of Abras and Kadabras, because we have... They are one of the most common Pokemon families to get in this entire speedrun. So we will have so we always have an abundance of Abra and Kadabras. So that is never an issue. So we typically leave it sort of close to the end game with stuff like Rick and Brittany to essentially give us the best chance of winning. So we have only 2 fights left before we get to the Elite Four, or rather the Pokemon Dome, as this game, as the game will describe it. So we will essentially use a fire deck for the next 2 fights, because that is actually all that we have left before we get to the end game, which is 2 purely grass type fights. And let's see if we have... Is this the... Perfect. The reason why Ponyta is so good is because Ponyta can do 20 damage, but most of Kristen's Pokemon are weak to fire, which means it does 40. Now, the plus power gives us 10 extra damage, which means we win on the very first turn. And if you were to actually do this fight on a Charmander deck, you actually might do this fight very early on in the game, but Bulbasaur doesn't give us that many fire types to begin with. But throughout the course of the run, because we've been able to accumulate so many great cards, we are able to make it so we can potentially will our way into getting a first turn win on the second to last fight before we reach the end game, which I think is so really cool that we're able to actually do stuff like this so late into the run. So now this will be our final boss fight before the end game. Nikki. Nikki is annoying, for lack of a better word. Nikki has a lot of Pokemon that uses status ailments. So Oddish can stun you, Execute can put you to sleep, Gloom can poison you. So there's a lot of fights that can really make this fight extremely annoying, but if we are able to get ahead of things and have little problem with as far as the RNG, we should actually get through this fight relatively fine. But we have the, let's see. Okay, that is going to be a tail, so we actually are not going to be doing that. We are actually going to be wasting away our tails so that we can have this. There we go. Let's see. Oddish. Okay, perfect. We have basically set ourselves up to win this game no matter what. But yeah, there's a lot more annoying fights that we still have to do with Nikki. Nikki's quite annoying in the sense that just when you think you're about to win, boom, the fight's over. And ooh, that is a Venusaur. You would think that that is a threat, but believe it or not, Venusaur actually can't do anything. Venusaur requires a lot of energy to attack, and Venusaur actually doesn't have a way to easily access a ton of grass energy to be able to attack. So she just evolved for Venusaur for no reason. Let's see, what are we at? 45 minutes. 45 minutes for the end game. This is great. That's a huge cushion to have, because here's the unfortunate part. There is one bad aspect about this run, which is we only have one Duck Trio. We did not get any more Duck Trios throughout the course of the speed run. The Trios are win condition. We can still do this with only one Duck Trio. It's just going to be a lot harder. But actually no. We are in instances of extreme circumstance, we actually can use an alternate win condition. We will actually use, well, first of all, regardless of whether or not how many Duck Trios we have, we will do this Fire Club, do this first fight with a water deck, because our first Grandmaster is going to be Courtney. The Grandmasters all have special game exclusive legendary cards, with like some of them having absurdly broken abilities. So our first, as you might be able to tell, the first one is with a fire deck, meaning it's going to be Moltres. Moltres, or rather the special legendary Moltres. Ah, perfect. The special legendary Moltres that she has, if she is able to bring it out into the field, she will automatically get anywhere from 1 to 4 random fire energy cards. And she has 2 of those, meaning she will always have... Actually, you saw right there. This is the Moltres. She will almost always have a huge pool of resources to be able to attack. But the good thing about this fight is that Dugong will at most 2-shot everything in Courtney's deck, so that shouldn't be a problem. We are actually going to be employing an alternate win condition strategy for not the next fight, but the last 3 fights of the run, which is actually this Seal and Dugong. It's a little bit fast, it's a little bit slower, but it's probably a little bit more consistent than having to deal with a one Duck Trio deck. And we actually have 4 Dugong, which means it's probably for the best if we were to actually use an all Seal and Dugong deck. But before we actually do that, we're actually gonna have to do our second to last deck edit, which means we're gonna take out the Seals and Dugongs and be putting in our Glitchless and Duck Trios, because Steve is our resident lightning expert. And his Pokemon, his ace is Legendary Zapdos, which means his Pokemon power, once it's played onto the field, it will do 30 damage to any random target on the field, which means we could potentially see a scenario where we lose the before the fight actually starts. It actually has happened quite a bit, and that's the risk about doing stuff with... Ooh, that is a reset right there. We want to avoid any and all Zapdos if we only have one Diglett, so this will be quite the uphill battle we are facing. Okay, but we have a Pokeball, which means we actually have a very good chance of potentially getting that Duck Trio out onto the field. But it all depends on... Okay, perfect. Ooh, yeah, wow. It was gonna be on our... Okay. Let's see. I was deciding whether or not to kind of see if I was going to even let the fight happen. Get the Duck Trio now, or rather wait for a little bit, but might as well just get the Duck Trio out now. Because if we're able to get a Duck Trio, then this is essentially a win for us, because Steve doesn't really have anything to counter Duck Trio. The only Pokemon that he has is a non-legendary Zapdos that can actually one-shot us if he's able to get a ton of setup. Let's see. And let's see. Wow, that is very unlikely to have 3 straight coin flips from Jolteon that actually would have beaten us. But thankfully, we can go back in time, for lack of a better word, and get the jump on the Jolteon and take away his resources for attacking. Let's see. If we don't get paralyzed, we do. So we now have to hope for a full heal. We do not, but we can scout ahead. Perfect. So the next coin flip was going to be head, so we were actually going to get paralyzed, but because we re-rolled, because we basically re-rolled the coin flip, we don't have to worry about the us getting paralyzed, and he actually chose not to go for the move that paralyzes us. So either way, we were going to win because we basically messed with the RNG, knowing that it was going to be a heads next time. Okay. That was actually not as painful as it could have been. So now we are going to do our final deck, and we're going to be doing the Seal and Dugong strategy for the rest of the fight. One other thing I failed to mention, which we actually haven't seen yet, but we still might see it, is remember how he said at the very start of the fight? There we go. Actually, there it is. So you notice how he said at the very start of the run, where boss fights cheat, and you will never see a boss start out with only one Pokemon out on the bench. That's a bit of a lie. When it comes to the Grandmasters, if we see a scenario, as we saw actually just now, if they only have one basic Pokemon and their legendary ace, they will only play their basic Pokemon and not have their ace out onto the field. The reason being is you can't actually activate their Pokemon power if you actually send them out into the field on the very first action of the game. So that's why they kind of leave it. So, but that does leave the potential, if you're able to actually get away with it, you could theoretically win against one of the Grandmasters, some of the Grandmasters, on the very first turn of the fight. Which is something that you can oddly not say when it comes to the rest of the regular bosses for this fight. And oh man, we were actually about to get the victory. That is kind of the unfortunate part with the Dugong strategy, is that Duck Trio could have easily won us the fight right here and there. And ooh, Jack is just getting so many cards right out the get-go, but that is not going to be an issue. We are actually totally fine. So it's all a matter of basically just taking out his final Pokemon. Duck Trio could have one-shotted this Chansey without any trouble, but... oh, come on. Yeah, this is, like I said, it's quite annoying having to deal with this. But But Jack is essentially delaying the inevitable, and this is still actually a fine fight, because this is one of those fights. This is the hardest fight in the game, in my opinion. And if you're able to, I don't know why Jack decided to put an energy card just so that it decided not to do anything. And there we go. That's Jack. Jack's very annoying, as you notice. So yes. So basically, Jack. What makes Jack so difficult is that his legendary Articuno can stun lock us. His Lapras can confuse us. His Chansey can wall us. His Dugong, which we actually didn't see, but he actually has Dugong, can do a lot of damage. He has another type of Articuno that can also do a lot of damage. So this is actually this is kind of long, but not the worst. So we are now on our second to last fight, believe it or not. Rod is this game's version of Lance, the Dragon Master, quote unquote. Let's see, what do we have? We can try to do some shenanigans. Actually, no, we do not. We do not have a second plus power. Never mind. There we go. Now we have our Dugong, and let's see. We're actually going to take care of the Dratini because Rod has Dragonair, which is extremely annoying since it basically has 80 HP, meaning it takes 2 turns to take it out. And it also has that's actually fine. Let's see. We're still fine. But we have a plus power, meaning we can take out the Kangaskhan in one go. Let's see what Charmeleon has in store. So yeah, so Rod has a lot of weak Pokemon, and his strategy is essentially using Pokemon to evolve into stronger Pokemon, but if he doesn't get to do that, then it's a bit of a cakewalk right there. And I just saw right there, Rod's the easiest of the Grandmasters, so not really much to this fight. His legendary Pokemon is Dragonite, which you never see because it requires a Dratini to evolve twice, and you hardly ever get to... it's rare. It's not even common to see him evolve Dratini once, so, you know, it's really rare to see an evolution on the same Pokemon twice. So we're now, as he's already there, our rival Ronald has shown up, and he's annoying. He is very, very annoying. This actually might be out. I might have to reset this fight. Yeah, we're not no sign of Dugong anywhere. So basically, what this fight essentially boils down to is Ronald's AI merciful enough to allow us to go through this fight in relatively quick fashion. Ronald has all of the legendary birds. He has 2 copies of all the legendary cards in this game. So you have to deal with Zapdos trying to zap you when he's played onto the field. Articuno trying to freeze you, or paralyze you in this instance. Moltres being able to give plenty of energy resources. And, ooh, that's very annoying. Where is... Huh. Where is my water energy? Well, getting our water energy right now. There we go. Yeah, that was a bit of a weird thing that we did not get a chance to, weird that we didn't get more water energy. Okay, so anyway, so he has multiple copies of all the legendary, Zapdos. Oh, that's actually, fine. I put my foot in my mouth and we saw the Dragonite. After saying we never get to see the Dragonite, that was the Dragonite. His, legendary, Pokemon power is heals 30 damage of his entire team. That's it. It's really nothing that special. And in some regards, it's actually favorable for you to get a Dragonite instead of Dragonair. The reason being is that you don't have to run with the potential scenario of having to deal with Dragonair's secondary attack, Hyper Beam, which it only does 20 damage, but it also removes 1 energy from your Pokemon, which can be extremely annoying. And Ronald's just stalling at this point. We essentially have this in the bag. So let's see if we can actually get this in under an hour. So if he doesn't switch out his Moltres, we win. And oh, come on. So close. Do we have a plus power? We do. We win anyway. Okay. It's not time quite yet, but we basically, let's see if we can actually get the, let's see if we can actually pull this off. But yes, I will be letting you know when it is time. Once we get into this, finish this little cutscene of us getting all of our cards, that will be time. So I will let you know once we get to that point. There's our Zapdos, there's our Articuno, our Moltres, and there is our Dragonite. I failed to mention, actually no, it's going to be time and now, time. Okay, that is the game. I was about to mention, so this game, so Ronald has a very peculiar AI when it came to building the deck. Ronald doesn't know how to play the game because Zapdos and Articuno require lightning and water energy to attack. Ronald doesn't have those cards. So he essentially, you notice how, if maybe you saw the Zapdos and thought to yourself, why isn't he doing anything with the Zapdos? He can't. He doesn't have any resources to actually get it to attack. So he used it as a damage sponge to actually be able to just say, hey, I have the strongest cards. I can't do anything with them, but I have the strongest cards. So yeah, so Ronald can be a bit of a wild card, but relatively easy fight altogether. So yes, thank you so much, everybody. I'm very, very happy to be a part of this and doing this for Mind. I'm a huge mental health advocate, and I really, really implore all of you guys who can donate, who are able to donate to this cause. It's I'm really happy to Channel 734. Very grateful for having me be a part of this marathon, having me open day 2 of No Fish 2024. So thank you so much, everybody. I greatly appreciate it. It was a lot of fun being able to be a part of this showcase Pokemon TCG. Let's see, I think the time says 1 hour and 7. Well, to be fair, if we actually had started this without the tutorial, where I think I scuffed a couple of inputs, outside from that, this actually would have been a sub-hour run, which regardless, I'm very happy with this run. I would say this was an excellent run in my opinion. So anyway, thank you so much for everybody. I implore you to check out this game. You can actually play this game on the Switch. This game, if you have a Nintendo Switch Online account, you can actually play this game and you can speedrun this game. You don't need, and like I said, you don't need to do mail manipulation. You don't need some of these fancy tricks to be able to get a good time. I was able to get a 53, 57 on the Switch without using mail manipulation. So it just go to show. This game's a lot about execution, creative routing, resource management, on-the-fly decision making. So it's different from your typical speed run where it's a lot of glitch hunting, a lot of using a lot of exploitation of the game's code and programming. No, this is an exercise of the mind. And I think that's part of what makes this so much fun. And like I said, no 2 speedruns of the game are ever the same. A Bulbasaur run, a Squirtle run, and a Charmander run look entirely different. Hell, 2 Bulbasaur runs look very different from, if I were to run this game, I can guarantee you it will look nothing like what you saw right there. So I implore you guys to check this game out, and thank you so much for having me.
Alright, thanks so much for being with us. That was a fantastic run. We are going to be back after a short intermission with some Sonic Origins. So stick around, we will be back in about 10 minutes time. Thank you so much.